Well, I'll start, I guess. How do you look to build on what you guys accomplished this year? What's the number one goal going into the off season?
Well, I think from my vantage point, we talked. We had a great year. We really did. We far exceeded many expectations and learned a lot about our players. I think going forward, we talked about it. At the conclusion of the season, we need to find a way to get a little bit more offense going. And get more out of our players that we currently have on the roster. And I'm sure if there's a chance to add from outside, we'll do everything we can to take a look at that.
Jerry, how would you assess the 2021 season? What were your favorite aspects in the growth of this team in terms of like what we saw maybe after the series in San Diego in May up until the end of the season?
Well, the easy assessment is that following the series in San Diego, we were one of the best teams in the league in terms of winning and losing. We were outstanding roughly since that time. And disappointed that we're not still playing right now, but couldn't be happier with the progress we made this year. We saw some foundational players really step forward and guys that continue to get better. Ty France, we saw JP Crawford take real steps forward, both on the field and in the clubhouse. We saw, I think, consecutive months, of Jared Kelnick making progress. And every month he was in the big leagues, he got better and better. And in September, it was never more noticeable. The starting pitching, we saw guys get better and take steps forward. And especially in the case of Marco Gonzalez, we saw in that time space, after the San Diego series and in the second half, he was one of the best starting pitchers in the American League. So really excited about the progress we made. We got better every month, and you can't really ask for more than that.
Gary, when you look at all year long, people would look at the standings, and of course they'd go to the run differential, and you don't luck your way into 90 wins. There's no two ways about that. But I'm kind of curious in how you broke it down analytically as far as what was real and what are some things that we do need to work our way through that maybe we got away with a little bit.
That to me, Shannon, or Jerry? I'll cut
Jerry, please.
Jerry. Okay.
Oh, yeah. Obviously our run differential was upside down, and it was at an early stage in the season, and we had a couple of really lopsided losses that made it almost impossible to get back to ground zero. But in the second half of the season, we did get there, and our team was very different. We talked about the variability with such a young team with young players that were learning the league or getting their first extended audition as major league players, and they did get better. And the thing that we did that I do think is sustainable is we pitched well at the end of games, and we made great bullpen decisions throughout the course of the year. And we put our best bullpen guys in situations to succeed, I think, better than any major league team I've ever been around. And that contributed to winning close games. So I don't think our record in one-run games is lucky. I think that was by design, and it's what we did well, and our players earned that. That being said, I'd very much like next year to be in the green in run differential. I'm sure Scott would too.
Oh, yeah. You can only go with fun differential so long. You need a positive run differential.
Scott, after having no fans in the stands last year and coming back with a young core, many of whom had been here in 2019, but what was it like from your vantage point to see the city really embrace the personalities of a lot of these young players? Thinking of the JP chants in specific, and just kind of seeing the city really embrace the young core, especially over that last weekend.
It was an unbelievable experience for all of our players, not just our youngest guys. It's the guys that have been in the league a couple of years too. And you talk about, what happened in 2020. You're not playing in front of any fans, and then, now going out on the road, and as the crowds picked up throughout the course of the season, big time learning experience for our players when you go into Yankee Stadium or Boston and places like that, and you feel the electricity there, and certainly that can weigh on you as a visiting player. On the flip side, seeing what happened the final series of the season at home was It was just fantastic. And I guess I go back to the line, if you build it, they will come. And, we've talked about, a year ago, I really felt at that time that we had laid the foundation of what we were trying to do here. And we talked about taking another step. I think we're starting to put the frame up. And it's going to be a pretty big house when it's all said and done. So, seeing the excitement, the passion that our fans brought the final weekend, really, players don't forget that. They don't forget those feelings. They carry those feelings into the off season as they're going through their workouts and understanding what we need to do to get better. So big thank you to everybody out there. It meant a lot, and it'll mean even more, as we continue to build it. Hopefully they keep coming.
Hey, Scott, do you expect your coaching staff to all return for next season?
Yeah, I think, we're working through some things right now, Corey. Our staff did a great job this year, really did. And, we've got some younger coaches that continue to learn. And I'm learning from them on different ways to look at players and how to help develop them. But, that's something we'll work through here, and we'll have a better idea in a few weeks.
Jerry, you guys have said really since 2018 that this offseason would be the window to add to the payroll. And I don't think it's a question of whether you guys will be looking to add, but does winning 90 games accelerate anything or influence how you guys will approach the next handful of months?
No, we would have behaved the same way if we would have done 89, we think we're good and we think we're closer than we've ever been. And this was always our plan, was to 2019-20 provide our players with extended auditions, give them opportunity to gain experience. We thought we would start to turn a corner right about now. And I think we did that. We achieved that goal, and now it's incumbent on us to go add where we can add and improve where we can improve. And that's not lost on us. And we'll visit every avenue to do that, whether it's the free agent market, it's the potential for trade, but we do have payroll flexibility, and we're going to use it to go out and make the team better.
Kind of building on that, Jerry, do you think that this can be a pretty robust free agent market if you were to dip into those waters this year?
Well, sure. I think it's a very talented group of free agents, and we've talked. We want to make our lineup longer, and there's chances to do that on the free agent market. There's opportunity to do that. We'll look under every stone like we always have. And at the end of the day, we have such a good foundation in place, and we know that there's a tipping point for this team, and if we can tip it, then we're going to try as hard as we can to do that. And I do think that with the way our season ended, the fact that we did get to 90 wins, the fact that this place was electric for the final 3 days, but truly, this has to be a more appealing place to a major league free agent than it has been in many years, and that's going to help us a lot.
Guys, kind of tying in with that, and I guess it probably affects what you look at in free agency, but do you go into the offseason thinking that Abraham Toro is your second baseman, or do you consider moving him back to third where he had previously played mostly before coming here?
I know he's a good player, Tim, and he did a lot for us after we acquired him. We needed a shot in the arm offensively, and for the first 30, 40 days after we acquired him, he was awesome. He cooled off a little bit at the end. The one thing I will say, for a guy who had not played much second base at all, the strides he made were unbelievable. A ton of credit goes to certainly Perry Hill, our coaching staff, but ultimately it's the players got to put the work in and make the adjustments. And he did an awesome job. Still got plenty to work on there. I know third base is his comfort level. He's spent more time there. It'll probably just depend how the makeup of our team lays out based on, if and where we can add players and how that plays out. But I feel very comfortable putting him at either spot. I do like his bat, and I think he's going to hit. He makes contact. The switch hit is super valuable when you're putting a lineup together. It just balances you so much better. It controls the strike zone. He can run a little bit. He adds a lot of things offensively for us.
Guys, where does Kyle Lewis fit in next year? Can you pencil him in as an everyday center fielder, or are you going to have to make some concessions to his knee, which seems to be kind of chronic?
For me, I think we have to go into next season planning on whatever Kyle is able to deliver is a bonus for us. And it's he's had a really rough go here with his knees, and through no fault of his own, missed a good part of this season. And he'll be a huge part of what we do, but we can't push very hard on the pencil until we see him play. And right now we're not in a position to make a call like that. But when Kyle Lewis is healthy, we're a better team when he's on the field. And we'll make sure that there's an opportunity to get the most out of what he has to give. But there's really no certainty until we see him out there playing.
Jerry, similar idea with Ty France kind of taking hold of first base. How's Evan White factor into things here, and how's his kind of health looking at this stage?
Again, we're going to have to see what it looks like when he's fully rehabbed and ready to return to play. Ty did a wonderful job. And I thought from beginning to end, it's hard to really find a flaw in his season. He played spectacular defense, which frankly, we couldn't have bet on. He was, we'd never seen much of him at first base. And I thought he was the best first baseman in our league from a defensive standpoint. And, from tip to tip, he was about as consistent a hitter as we had in our lineup. And he gives you a great professional at bat every time through. He's going to be in our lineup. Where Evan White falls in is going to have to be determined once we get a better gauge on where his health is. And we just don't have that right now.
Hey, Jerry, we haven't talked about pitching yet. I imagine there's probably a need or a want to add a starting pitcher, but also realizing you have guys like Matt Brash and George Kirby knocking on the door. How do you sort of balance the two between wanting and needing depth? You certainly needed it this year. Maybe you won't go through that again moving forward. But how do you sort of balance, adding starting pitching this winter versus knowing that there's going to be guys coming and coming fast?
Well, we don't naturally want to block the young guys from having an opportunity. And you mentioned a couple of them. I could also throw Brandon Williamson in that group, guys that are generally coming fast. But I say that, and this year is a great example of, don't plan on 5 guys running through the season without hitting a bump in the road from, either from an effectiveness or an injury perspective. So, we're going to go out and we're going to see if we can stabilize or add to our starting rotation. But when the Kirbys and the Williamsons and the Brashes when they're ready for an opportunity, we're going to give them an opportunity. And my guess is we're not going to run into a situation where you think, boy, we just don't have enough innings to give because that's not how big league pitching works.
Jerry, can you address the future with the Mariners of the 3 senior eminences, Seager, Haniger, and Kikuchi?
Well, I can tell you in the case of Haniger and I guess to a lesser extent with Kikuchi, Mitch will be back on the club playing the same role he played this year and years past when he's been healthy. Terrific season. I can't say enough about the way he rebounded after a year and a half lost. We could not have, it was a gift to get the performance that we got out of Haniger. Now, and the others are decisions that haven't yet been made. And my expectation is that, we have until 5 days after the World Series to make these decisions. And I think it's wise business to let emotion, not govern a decision and sit down and logically talk it through. And we'll do that.
What do you think happened with Kikuchi to go from all-star to a guy that you pulled from the rotation in the most important game of the year?
Yeah, I think if you look at USA's season in the whole, he did an unbelievable job in the first half. We would not have been in this position without him really kind of at the head of our starting core. If you remember, Marco Gonzalez was out a month. We didn't get Logan Gilbert until we were a month into the season, and he had stubbed his toe a little bit early on. So Kikuchi and, of course, Flexen were really the guys that, were stable. We know what we were getting almost every time out there. And, after coming out of the All-Star break, you say just it wasn't the same. I think his ability, if you look at his stuff and how his stuff played, he was very reliant on the cutter. It was coming at 90, 92 miles an hour. It had great movement, action to it. It was a pitch that allowed him to get back into counts. Oftentimes they were putting it on the ground. So he was working through games, getting deeper in games than he ever has before because he was controlling his pitch count. At some point he lost the feel for the cutter. And that was really his pitch to kind of, like I said, manage the counts, get back into counts, get ahead in counts. And then at times you'd see the electric fastball. There were games that was there. And along the way, the changeup was a certain part, but just the consistency of what it takes to be a top end starting pitcher in this league, it faltered. It went away. And I think part of it, played into his psyche. How do I get it back? How do I and anytime you're trying to chase something that you had previously, it is so hard. I always talk to players about, you need to go forward. What do you need? What changes you need to make? You have to almost forget about, what you went through in the first half, but how do we get you back on course in the second half? And, we tried a number of different things. I've sat down with him 2 times and remember the meetings vividly about just trying to simplify things and get external. You say he's a big time worker. We talked for years here how his routines, he's so routine orientated, stuff like that. But along the way, when you're not getting really good result, you got to make a little bit of an adjustment. And we struggled to get him back on track. I know he was frustrated. Myself, the pitching coaches felt bad we weren't able to get him back on track because he's a very talented guy. There's no question about that. But combination of kind of losing the feel for the cutter, what it did to him mentally and trying to get that back, it was a struggle. And I did feel for him. I think one of the toughest meetings I've had in a long time was when I sat down with him and told him he was not going to be pulled out of the starting rotation. Very difficult to do that with a player that we wouldn't be in this spot without the efforts and the performance that he put out there. So not the way I think anybody envisioned the season ending for him, certainly with the way it started, but you have to make adjustments. You have to do what's best for the team. And at the time, I thought that was the best thing for the team.
Jerry, God, I just spaced it now. JP has talked openly about how much he loves the city and how much he wants to be a leader of this team moving forward. Have you guys talked at all with his reps about maybe putting something together for him? I know he's entering out in his second year of ARB eligibility. And what have you seen from him in terms of kind of grabbing that leadership role and being kind of the player you envisioned when you went and got him, when a lot of people thought he was a busted prospect?
He, like a lot of our guys, is his path to where he is presently just wasn't linear. And but since joining the Mariners, JP has gotten better every year, and you see small adjustments to his game. I think he's become the best defensive shortstop in our league. The leader on the field mentality. I love the energy that he brought this year at the top of the lineup, and for a team that really achieved what it achieved because of its emotion and those emotional leaders, I thought JP showed emotional leadership at a really generally a young age. JP's still a young player in the league, but he's here for a couple of years. If I had considered the idea of keeping him here longer than what presently is available, I probably wouldn't share it at this point. But we do intend on JP being here and being a fixture in what we're doing, and we'll address that at the appropriate time and in the appropriate way.
Scott, Jerry rather, sorry. When we talked with Julio over this past weekend, he said he really wants to attack spring training, come in and potentially compete for a roster spot right out of the chute. What are some realistic expectations for him after such a monster year?
With Julio, there really is no unrealistic expectation. He is so talented, and it's hard to have a better year at multiple levels, including international, the Olympics, than Julio had. He was phenomenal. He's got a big personality. He's awesome in a clubhouse. He truly is, the newest iteration of Mr. Mariner. He believes in our organization. He believes in his coaches and the people, who have taken care of him to this point in his career. I love him, and I think he's going to be a wonderful player for a lot of years. Tough to sit here on October 7th and pinpoint what that means for the start of his 2022 season, but I wouldn't put anything past him. And some of that, whatever opportunity is available to him on the front end, is going to be dictated by what we're able to do in the offseason. And, our team is going to look a little different on opening day of spring training 2022 than it looks today, is more than just a guess. So where the pieces fall between now and then will go a long way toward determining, what the front end opportunity looks like with Julio. But I would be stunned if Julio doesn't play a role, and a pretty significant role, in our 2022 season.
Jerry, with the last 2 seasons, a big focus being on getting the young players experience, how much has that flipped right now with everything that you've done this year? I mean, how competitive does it get? You've got guys who are on the IL. You've got some guys that were up and really weren't able to do much down the stretch. And what does this say to, all of these players about kind of level of competition and how they are going to get and keep their positions down the road?
Well, and I know Scott will agree with this. The bottleneck of talent that we have right now, it's getting crowded, and we probably have more depth than we've ever had, at least in our years here. And that's what good teams have, is they have that type of depth. We have a young and very flexible roster of players. And I think moving forward, you're going to have to really work and earn the plate appearances and the innings and in ways that maybe weren't naturally true in 2019 and 2020. But that being said, we're very excited about what's happening. And and as much that the group of players here that have somewhere in that 0 to 3 major league service and have shown flashes but have yet to put it together, there's another group coming right behind them that is going to make it even more pronounced, the depth and talent, and that's what we were working for throughout. So I'm excited to see it come to pass. Some guys are going to wind up having to really compete for their innings and their plate appearances.
Have you given any, I'm sure you're giving thought, but how much do you think the CBA, the pending CBA, could affect the free agent market on timelines, all this other stuff? I mean, we've seen some teams lock up some players now, but how much do you think that plays a factor in that?
It's definitely going to play a factor in our off season, and that goes for everybody league wide. That being said, all we can do is follow the rules and the market as it exists right now. And our expectation is that the week after the World Series, the market will open and we are going to be very aggressive going out. We always are. We tend to move pretty quickly, but we're going to go out and we are going to be heavy in recruiting the free agents that we think make sense for us. And we're going to approach it like it's any other off season until we find out otherwise. And that's really all we can do.
Jerry, has probably a simple question, but has John given you assurances that you'll have the okay to raise payroll significantly from where it was this year in order to be aggressive in the free agent market?
Yes.
Thanks. That's a totally simple question.
To follow up on that, Jerry, given what's happened this season, what can you say to Stanton and ownership now that you haven't been able to say before?
I don't really know that there's an answer to that question because I say a lot of things. I have a very good relationship with John, with our ownership group. We laid out a plan postseason 2018 on what we wanted to do, the timeline we wanted to do it on, and roughly what we thought that would look like from both an economic and talent perspective. And at this point, we're shockingly close to what we thought our timeline was going to be. I do think that a 90-win season and seeing a city energized by our play is an advantage for us. But in 2018, and this is to Tim's question from earlier, in 2018, we had those assurances from ownership. And, here recently, it's been doubled down. We are definitely committed to making this team better. And John and our ownership group understand what that means. And that's an exciting thing for us because we did a lot of work over these last couple of years to create this opportunity, and we want to take advantage of it.
Scott, I know we asked you this at the end of the season, but looking now, what do you think your biggest needs are? Like if you wanted to look at your roster, what you have in the organization, what you have moving forward, where do you think you could really make this team push over the top?
Yeah, we touched on this a little bit right at the end of the season, and I've been pretty open. I think Jerry has as well. We need to be better offensively. Where do those players fit? There's a lot of different ways to get better offensively. You just don't have to say, okay, we need this player. Player X is the player we have to have, and then it gets you over the hump. I think you go down a rabbit hole there that sometimes you can't get out of if you get so locked in on one player. You need to be creative and flexible, and Jerry and Justin, the guys in the front office, we all understand that. So just to say, we need this, we need that. I think, for me, offensively, I'd like to see us add a couple players. I don't think it's just one big fish, so to speak. I think it's a couple guys to balance out the lineup, to create more length to our lineup. And I do think some help in the starting rotation is key. I love our bullpen. Those guys had a great year, and I think we've got a couple guys that have been hurt this year that will add to it next year. We all understand how bullpens work, though. They can be a little. They go up and down. You know, you can have 4 or 5 guys that are killing it, then all of a sudden you show up the next year and you have a couple injuries, lack of performance. This guy's fastball isn't there. It can change in a hurry. So you need multiple. You need a lot of depth, and that's what excites me about our bullpen, because we do have depth and we're adding to it. So looking at the club as a whole, I think a starting pitcher at some point. Don't know if that's top end, middle, bottom of the rotation. Have to see what's out there, and then a couple bats.
Your catchers hit a combined 190 this year. Is that a position you feel like you need to upgrade, or can you just expect improvement from Cal and Murph and just hope that it gets better next year?
Well, I definitely think there's room for growth with both of those guys. I think, again, what's available, what's it going to cost? Well, all those things. And I know that the infield free agent market, or what's available to get through trade, may be many more guys out there than what's available on the catching side. So, looking at our guys, Cal's very young. He learned a ton this year. I do believe there's a good offensive player in there. And typically, if you look at the course of history in the game, catchers usually hit a little bit later in their career. It takes them a while. There's a lot going on at that position. I thought Tom Murphy, another guy, did not play at all in 2020, and to get him through an entire season and knowing the impact he had with our pitching staff, I don't think we give enough credit to those guys. And we talk about our pitching coaches and our analysts and the whole group. But at the end of the day, the players got to play. They have to believe in our process and what we're talking about. And nobody believes bigger in what we're doing than Tom Murphy. And he has the voice to drive it with our pitching staff. So there's a lot of value there that doesn't get tied into a 190, whatever it is, batting average, Larry. I know you're on the batting average thing lately, but there's a lot more value there that goes into that. So you have to take all those things into context. I like our catching, and let's not forget about Luis Torrens. That batting average is a little bit better, Larry, and he's got work to do defensively, but we saw him catch a number of games early, and I suspect in the future you'll see him back catching again, along with playing multiple positions. So our catching, if you get all caught up in the batting average, may not look that great, but I like our group, but it does need to get better. There's no question.
Hey, Jerry, with a shortened bench, it really makes a lot of sense. And you guys have done a good job with this, of having players who are flexible, who could play a number of different positions. And especially with the DH spot, that's a good spot to kind of rotate guys through. We saw how that helped Mitch get him off his feet on occasion, probably why he was so strong late in the year. But how do you sort of envision how a bench sets up? Does it look a little different now than maybe what it did 5-10 years ago in the game?
I think it does in the American League, where there used to be just a standard DH that was going to take up one of your everyday positions. And, you were going to have one utility infielder and one extra outfielder and your extra catcher. And that's how your bench was going to set up. One of the things that we have really placed a premium on over the years was finding athletic, versatile players that could do a lot of different things. Scott talked earlier about Abraham Toro and Dylan Moore, who's been here. There are other players that have come through, including Ty France, that where we have really isolated on guys that were positionally versatile, and that's going to give us a ton of flexibility going into this offseason, because it allows us to go find additional offense without having to focus on one specific position, because we have other players that can do that can fill that void. And our bench, because we want to carry extra pitching, as to the extent that we can, our bench is required to be versatile. And, Dylan Moore didn't have a consistent season with the bat, but whenever he's on the field, he's one of the best defenders wherever you put him. And he's perhaps our best base runner. And, the versatility that he brings, as we talked about with Toro, what we look forward to with Ty France, we know he's going to hit in the middle of our lineup, and we suspect that he's going to do it from one of the positions he's played this season. And I think the primary will be first base, but he gives you the versatility to do other things, which gives you the opportunity to enhance your everyday lineup. I think our bench players are already here. Now it's a matter of what we can do to create the everyday lineup that will determine which way we go.
Jerry, with several guys on the 60-day DL and 60-day IL and just Rule 5 guys and stuff, how difficult is, formulating your 40-man roster? It seems like you might have to lose a couple guys that have probably been pretty valuable to the organization on tough roster decisions.
But I would say that's definitely going to happen, right? And that's the price of getting better and deeper, is that, inevitably you're going to lose some talent that in years past it was very simple for us to protect and keep on our 40-man roster. We've got a couple of really talented young players that need to be added this offseason, and we are going to add them. Obviously, we added Matt Brash. We go in before we activate the players off the 60-day IL, which is going to happen, coming up here soon in about a month. There's going to be a little bit of a cascade on our 40-man. And again, talking through the desire to add in the free agent market or even be a trade this offseason, we're going to go out and get other major league players. So it's going to be tough to make the Mariners 40-man roster this offseason in a way that it hasn't in recent years. And we will lose players that we really like and who have contributed heavily.
Guys, what's the future for Justice Sheffield and Justin Dunn? Do they come back next year as potential bullpen options, or do you anticipate them competing for rotation spots? And with that, do you have an update on where Ken Giles is in his recovery?
I can hit on Ken Giles pretty easily. I'm glad to take all of them, but Ken Giles is ready to throw. He's throwing off a mound. He was just slightly behind where Andres Munoz was, and if the season went another 3 weeks, I think you'd probably see Ken Giles out there in the same way you just saw Andres. So has gone through his rehab pretty cleanly and looks terrific. We saw him when we were down in Arizona in August, and he's in a good place. He's throwing great, and we expect for Ken, for Andres to be with us in first day of spring training and throughout the season. And I would also add that in addition to what was a wonderful bullpen this year, a full season of Diego Castillo is an exciting thing for us. As he's a guy that we think can contribute as well.
Yeah, in regards to Chef and Dunny, certainly disappointing years. And, for Chef, coming off a really solid year, 2020, I thought he was ready to take a next step forward. It didn't happen. He had to step back where he was at, and came back at the end of the year, obviously in our bullpen. Where does he fit long term? I do think Chef still has the opportunity to be a starter in this league. With Dunny, again, injury, cut his season short, and another guy has a chance to be a starter in this league. I say all those things and kind of going back to what we talked on earlier. The bar has been raised so much higher here than it's ever been, that competition is an awesome thing. It makes us all better, and it'll make those guys better because they know what's ahead of them. If they want to crack into a rotation of a team that's got a chance to go to the playoffs, they're going to have to be much more consistent, reliable, stay healthy, all those other things. But that's how I see both those guys. I think their future still is a starting pitcher. Doesn't mean they couldn't end up in a bullpen, but that's how I see it as we sit today.
Jerry, I know you mentioned Kyle and Evan. Are you anticipating that they'll be ready for spring training, good to go, or do you think that they could be slowed before we get to spring training?
I really don't have an answer for that question. They're both going through the rehab process. I can say we're hopeful, but there is no certainty until we get further into the process and both of them get back to baseball activity. Really can't make that kind of determination until then.
Scott,
Jerry, one more. Jerry, one more from me. In past years, you kind of just say, "Hey, look, we need relievers. We're going to have relievers. We need, last year said we need to have starters." Do you have, like Scott said, there isn't a set guy that you feel? Do you feel the same way? There isn't one set position, but more just like adding talent is the key, not just like, hey, we got to have just one thing or just one position.
Yeah, I'd have to say if a way to categorize our needs, we would like to add offense wherever the offense comes from. And it would be hard to imagine not one of those players not manning some infield position. There is an opportunity to use that DH slot in a creative way like we did this year. And, that's the game as well. But, we're just looking to add talent. And I think with what we just mentioned, with with Seawald and Steck and Swanee and Sadler and Miz and now add Giles, Castillo, and Munoz to the group, I don't think we're going to go fishing in the bullpen market in this offseason, and we're thrilled to have that kind of depth and bring those guys back, which is why I said starting pitching. I think it's we are going to be one of 30 teams that want to continue to build a more robust pitching staff, and that's going to be a focus for us. And the likelihood for us is it's going to come as a starter. But our primary objective is to increase or improve the depth of our lineup. So that'll be focus number one.
Scott, starting with the Mather episode in spring training, through COVID, through all the injuries that you had to deal with and some of the big losses, can you describe the degree of difficulty this year in managing everything and coming out obviously on the positive side?
Well, I think every team, all 30 teams, go through stretches that there's things that they never plan on that you have to deal with throughout the course of a season. There's so much that happens with all the different players. I think we used 63 players this year, is what the final number was. So, dealing with all the personalities and then some of the outside things that were upon us, the COVID issue that hit us back in May, working our way through that. I think for me, it was the most gratifying season that I've had since I've been here. And the fact that we stayed very consistent. We stayed very true to what was going to be our core beliefs. And that was, doesn't matter, get better. And we did it. We did it every day. And we got better. We got better, every month of the season as it went along. I thought we finished with a flurry, which is what you're hoping to do when you have young players and you're building something. You want to finish strong. So you leave that taste in everybody's mouth. And, from our players to our fans, to our coaching staff, to the front office, we can't wait to get into this off season and looking forward to what 2022 is going to bring us. So for me, I had a blast. It's the most fun I've ever had managing. There's some challenges. There's challenges in every year, and every team has to go through it. You just expect the expected. You know what's coming. You don't know exactly what's coming or when it's going to come, but there will be bumps in the road. And it's very gratifying when you can get, you work through those things with players, with staff, as an organization, and you come out on the other end. I say all that, and it's hard watching these playoff games. It is. You watch those wild card games, and you're thinking, man, we should have been there. We're that close. But I know there's a there's a lot of hunger. There's a lot of hunger in this clubhouse when those guys packed up their stuff here on Sunday, and it'll be good for them to think about that throughout the offseason as we get ready to get to Peoria in February.
Any last questions for Jerry and Scott?
Yeah, I got just one last. Jerry, from an innings pitch standpoint, for your big league guys, obviously, but then for your minor league guys, did you get them to where you wanted to, like with all your main big league guys or your prospects? And would we see any of these guys getting innings in winter ball or anything like that?
You might see one or two of them pick up a few innings in the Arizona Fall League. I don't think you'll see any substantial innings coming in foreign winter leagues. We got the guys where they needed to be for the most part. I think a few exceptions to that. Obviously, there's some injuries. We talked at the major league level about Dunny and Justice. We didn't naturally get them quite where we would have liked them to be. It was roughly a lost season for guys like Nick Margavicius and LJ Newsome, but there's little we could do about that, and we're just going to have to use 2022 to start over again with building their innings when they're ready. And we do think Margs is going to be ready on opening day of spring training. Obviously not so with LJ. And from a minor league perspective, across the board, it went very well for us from a pitching perspective. I could say we probably didn't get where we wanted to be with Emerson Hancock in terms of his inning total. And we would have liked to seen a couple more innings out of George Kirby. But generally speaking, the George was close enough. The rest of the group, achieved what we wanted to achieve. And I think they're all ready to go and pitch a normal full season in 2022.
Any off-season procedures for any of your guys on your 40-man or top prospects that you're anticipating?
Not that I'm anticipating, but that doesn't mean they're not going to happen. Right now, we're generally speaking, we're well aware of what's gone on. We've had a fairly active season from a medical perspective. A lot of IL placements up and down our system. We did miss out with some players at the lower levels that we'll have to continue to rehab, but not expecting anything notable moving forward.
How's Shed doing? Do you expect him for spring training next year?
No, I don't have an answer to that question. He's still, seeking opinions on what's going on with him. But again, like we talked about with Kalu and with Evan, not a lot we can talk about until we know and see him get back on the field.
All right. Thank you, everyone.